What if I told you that this?
Adriana Smith is being kept alive by machines because she's pregnant. Georgia's abortion law demands that even in death, her womb must serve as an incubator.
Starts out like this.
Okay, guys, it's time for me to educate you. Having children isn't up to us. Guess what? So I have been saying for years that God provides for us after we have the baby, not before. And I finally found biblical evidence of it.
Do you want to form an alliance with me?
Absolutely, I do.
Good.
Big man, you okay? Listen to me real carefully. Blink twice if you need help, because from where I'm standing, you're looking like the prize bovine on a breeding farm, my lord.
Free will simply means, do you trust God to know what's best, or do you think that you know better?
Wait.
I'm so interested in this video already because now you hitting the house now.
She says that God gives us free will, and I just feel like they would be very offended that she's using her free will to go to CVS and buy that hideous CoverGirl foundation in 2 shades darker than her skin tone.
This hit a little differently when you know slavery was legal in the Bible, but I get ahead of myself. This woman babbling on about how free will works while she have her husband doing tricks on it like goddamn Shamu is Karissa Collins, viral momfluencer with 500,000 TikTok subscribers, anti-vaxxer, homeschooler, Yahweh worshipper, as well as, and let's not forget, a quiver for Christ. All of that to say, Carissa's main goal on earth is popping out enough kids to field a soccer team and convincing as many people to do so in the process. And I ain't even gonna lie, she really good at what she doing, like S-tier breeding. I'm talking the final boss of breeding. She had 11 children, yes, 11 children in her household. This woman been pregnant damn near every other year since I was a freshman in high school. And I just turned 30 years old. Lord, I never could get this blood clot video out because this woman can't stop having children for a second. Here she is announcing another one. Yes, while editing this video, she literally announced that she is pregnant with her 12th child.
Children didn't hear me. I said 12 children.
Mom, you're pregnant! No, Mom, you're gonna have children. Wait, no!
I don't know what I'm gonna have, but yes, I'm pregnant.
Mom!
That's crazy! That's a football team!
That's the Wu-Tang Clan. All it takes is 5 excruciating minutes on this woman's account, and you'll quickly understand what she's all about. Get pregnant as many times as possible, as many times as God wants you to, by any means necessary. No matter the many ethical and practical concerns which you will shortly get into, but after consuming this woman's videos to the point of nausea, it is clear Karissa Collins believes a woman's place is a portal. To Karissa, a woman's sole value is to have children. So, of course, as you can see, that probably negates a lot of different experiences of women, which is pretty terrifying, I ain't even gonna lie to you, especially when you consider that Karissa has 7 daughters that she's raising. Who need groomers preening young flowers to be plucked by predators when you have parents like these?
There are people who can't have kids. Does that mean that God is not allowing them to have children? Is God punishing them for whatever reason? Also, some people who can have biological children who may not want to have biological children, is that also God's plan?
The erasure of so many different people in that very pregnant sentence, pun intended, bears so many different realities and excludes a lot of them. And besides the fact that Carissa's whole personality is churning out babies, there's something else that I noticed on Carissa's little page here too. Her husband's name isn't mentioned anywhere. Like anywhere. I mean, I literally had to go digging on her Facebook, and I hate the blue app, to find out if this man even had a name. His name is Mandingo. Mandre. He's never given a line to say. All he does is stand there and look like someone's holding him at gunpoint. To the yam heads watching, you probably thinking something like, foreign, you gonna pull a muscle with that reach that you making right there, my guy. Locked up. They won't let me out. They won't let me out. I'm locked up. They won't let me out. No, they won't let me out. This woman have my boy post up in every video as the underdeveloped base supporting actor whose only role is to shoot up the club. And our kids are more known for their birth order and the year that they were born in than their actual names. She might as well name these children Experiment 626.
January, February, March, April, May, June, July, honest.
So let's be charitable. You know, maybe this is a safety thing, right? But something telling me that the way that she's using the children's forced smile all over her account every day, including locations that could easily be found by any weirdo on the internet, and I'm talking about you Kick users out here. If he's a grown man using Kick, I ain't gonna lie, straight to jail. No, don't collect $200, straight to jail. I'm willing to bet that none of these choices have anything to do with their well-being. She doesn't blur out any of their faces, and this is gonna live online forever. It's because she does not care. She doesn't care about their well-being. She doesn't care about their names. She doesn't care about them as fully articulated people. It's all about putting out an image as a big happy family for Christ.
I have an activity for y'all to do. To your youngest child, and say this to them. If you are considering not having any more children, or you have made the decision to stop having children, look at your youngest child and tell them why. So this is my youngest baby Arrow. He's the 11th child. I'm going to look at him and pretend like he's my 12th child, my future child, and tell him the reasons that I don't want to have any more children. Arrow, I'm sorry, I can't give you life. Your siblings just don't want another baby. Arrow, I'm sorry, I can't give you life because I just don't have enough time to give to all the other children. Arrow, I can't give you life because I'm too old and I don't want you to have an old mom. Arrow, I can't give you life because I have health issues. And what if I die? Arrow, I can't give you life because I just don't have enough money to provide you with food.
Mom, I think your subconscious might be screaming at you with these questions, but she thinks she's godly because she's producing more followers for Christ. But what if I told you that Karissa is symptomatic of a much deadlier disease that has infected the United States as well as the world?
Having a kid is a vote for the future.
Of course I'm going to have a big family. That's what I'm going to spend my time doing. I'll just raise great kids.
It's important to have children and to create the new generation.
We believe God says that children are a gift and a blessing and a reward from Him.
God's commandment for His children to multiply and replenish the earth remains in force. The decision of how many children to have and when to have them is between a husband, wife, and the Lord.
I want more babies in the United States of America.
Now we about to get balls deep. Nah, that's wrong choice of words. We about to get deep into this in a minute, but what you gotta understand is that the members of this cult, the members of this movement, want to multiply. You know, like Genesis, be fruitful and multiply. But they ain't even doing it for the reasons laid out in the Bible. They want the only people left on earth to be people who think, act, and look exactly like them. Kind of like how a cancer cell replicates itself until it's only cancer cells left. Not only does having as many kids as possible create more soldiers for their army, but it's the perfect innocent masquerade for the whole thing. Oh, I just love kids. I'm a natural born mother, a nurturer. I was born to have children. It gave me purpose. It makes the whole thing seem harmless, noble, altruistic. Despite the fact that these niggas ain't even asked to be here and now they fighting with like 10 other siblings over hot pockets. But it's actually hiding some really insidious undertones just below the surface of all that fake piety. And now this movement is at the helm of the US government. If you didn't catch it, the Trump administration is actively trying to come up with ways to incentivize women to have more babies.
I'll be known as the fertilization president, and that's how we're going to have tremendous goodies in the bag for women too. The women, between the fertilization and all of the other things that we're talking about, it's going to be great.
So surely they're providing healthcare for pregnant people then? No? Okay, what about childcare or paid maternity leave? You fool, of course not. What about research into women's health, free education, or maybe, affordable housing? Anything that might help with the enormous task of creating a child, a human being. No, why the hell would you do that, right? What this absolute ass of an administration is actually proposing to get women to have more kids is a 5,000 baby bonus in a country where a hospital bill for giving birth is $30,000 on average, and that's if everything goes perfectly. It could jump to like $50,000 if there's any complications. That's a year's salary for the average American. And before your plan B surviving niggas run into the comments, adjusting your spectacles and raising your pointer finger saying, well, foreign, actually, insurance, listen to this.
Labor and delivery. So this one is the one where I would expect it to be the most expensive because that's clearly why we're there. We got charged $10,593.40 for that one. And then our anesthesia. So my epidural cost us more than anything else. That one was $14,446.15.
Was it worth it?
Yes. Yes. We also had a pharmacy and supply cost. So pharmacy cost $2,007.25. For supplies, $565.03. So the grand total for everything came out to $32,011.73.
But that was just for our stay. We also had to pay for Aspen, our newborn daughter, to be in the hospital.
So her hospital stay, to stay with us in the room that we also paid for, was $4,008.
Our complete hospital bill cost $37,019.73.
Luckily, we have insurance, but insurance only helps so much. So how much we have to pay out of pocket to have a baby in America is $11,558.93. Was it worth it?
That one couple spent $11,000 out of pocket to have a child. And that's with insurance. Let's say you strap for cash. I mean, this is late stage capitalism we're talking about. And you're really considering having a baby to get that check. Why the hell would anyone sign on for that when the average surrogate in the US can make up to $55,000 and have their hospital fees paid on top of that?
There are these proposed government incentives to get people to have kids.
I think he's trying to incentivize people who, first of all, are white, who might already have the means and the money to have kids.
Statistically, if you really want people to be able to have families, we need things like healthcare and housing.
Because $5,000 is not going to even put a dent in the hospital bills, raising a child, especially in this country where we're going into a recession.
These little cash incentives are really more just ways that the conservatives are fueling an ongoing discourse that has kind of been ramping up for like a couple of decades now about falling white birth rates.
I don't think he's thinking of people like me when he's thinking of getting people to have children. I'm too, first of all, black. I'm too woke. It would be DEI for me to have children.
It's not even that they want people to have families. It's that specifically they do want women like me to be pregnant and pushing out little blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies.
And if your blood pressure wasn't high enough, there's actually more. Because in addition to the measly $5,000 payment that won't even cover half of your hospital bills, the Trump administration wants to set up programs to teach women about their menstrual cycle so that they can be educated on how to get pregnant easier. These are adults that have been menstruating since they were 12, and they're the ones that they're trying to educate. Forget research into women's health. Let's focus on teaching women how to get pregnant. I could see it now, you know. I could smell the patchouli, I could smell the Dracar Noir, and I could see the wooden table full of man them in suits, and then the most aggressively mid-white man gets up, starts clapping and says, this is an amazing idea. You really did your big thing with this one.
The construction and the concept of white femininity is a core feature of fascism and white supremacy.
White women are places typically at the right hand of the oppressor. We all recognize that something is wrong and something isn't right, but because we are the second in command, it's why a lot of women are choosing to return.
The white women reproduce the culture in the home. As under patriarchy, it's them who tells the story of fascism, of racism, of white supremacy to the young people before they exit the home.
The move towards being a trad wife is well, we're still deeply unhappy. Maybe we were wrong to try to be to try to be the masters of our own fate.
And finally, they took off their mask and they really exposed themselves into what they were trying to do, because they announced that if a woman has 6 or more kids, not even people at this point, just statistics, they get a medal. I am serious. National Medal of Motherhood. This is the type of that Margaret Atwood wish she thought of when she was writing Handmaid's Tale. I swear. At a time when research into women's health have never been lower and they're charging women for because they had a that's when they think that American women are jumping at the chance to get pregnant for a pathetic, insulting $5,000. And did I mention that this only applies to married women? And therefore, single mothers who probably need the funds the most are now incentivized to get married, to get tethered to men after research has already shown that they stand to live a far better quality of life and probably longer if they didn't. An administration that doesn't care about women's well-being, I mean, they obviously don't care about the baby's well-being, considering that any person that's making a kid for $5,000 isn't going to be too concerned with their quality of life because they can. All they're thinking about is shackling women to as many screaming babies as physically possible so that they can better control them.
There has been this gradually snowballing conversation white men have been having where they feel like they are losing control of women as well. And a lot of this is also about control.
Some levity. Let's play a game. I'm about to read you a quote and you tell me where it's from. And I quote, "We women of America love you, men of America. We will mother your children, share your sorrows, multiply your joy, and assist you to prosper in the ways of this world's good. In return, we expect you to recognize our power for good over your lives and in the nation. We pledge our power to the motherhood of America." Dun, 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 dun. You probably think it's Karissa, right? You thought it was Karissa. You would think it's actually from a speech given to the women of the KKK back in 1924. Karissa and other folks like her might not have their white robes on for TikTok, but they have the same plan as the clan. Want to know who else had the grand plan to have their people have as many children as possible for unlimited truths for their country? Because the truth behind this baby forcing movement is that it's not all about having this big old happy family. It's not about doing right by God or even being a good Christian at all. It's about control. Control over producing more white babies, control over religious views, control over women, money, government, control over the world. And the worst part is, these niggas disguising a breeding king in Christian clothing in order to get their way.
Can you give me a baby?
You can hear Karissa and her friends talk about faith in God until they blue in the face. They'll do everything physically possible to convince you that the only way to be godly is to have as many children as possible, whether you can take care of the kids or not.
Oh my goodness, I love this question. I think
this isn't your average Christian who doesn't believe in a woman's choice. No, they don't think you should be doing anything to prevent pregnancy at all. No birth control, no condom, no pulling out. And if you do any of that stuff because, I don't know, you don't want to have so many kids that you start forgetting their damn name, you're actively going against God.
I want to birth control knowing that I'm not going to prevent future children, and the vasectomy is permanent. Every single day for a week that I put that pill in my mouth, I knew the Bible says anything not done in faith is sin. And so I knew I was sinning. I knew without a shadow of a doubt I was not obeying the Lord and I was going against his exact words to me. And so I told my husband, this was the hardest thing I've done so far in our marriage, I really believe I've had to do. I said, I'm giving you over to a vasectomy because I can't partake in sin. So I said, I will not pull out. I will not do anything that is going to prevent God from giving us life and blessing our family. Wow. And I said, I can't partake, but I also can't force you. And so I said, you can get a vasectomy, but you will stand before the Lord one day and you will account for what you've done.
All right, girl. Having 12 kids is a vote for the future. And if we don't have 12 children, society will crumble.
Yeah, they could definitely need that next tiny worshiper to spread their message after all. Karissa is so obsessed with this that she wrote a whole book on the matter. And book is a very loose term in this case. The title is, Should We Stop? Tackling All the Reasons People Stop Having Children and What God's Word Says About It by Karissa Collins. 2.7 stars on Amazon. No. Let me read you a summary real quick so you could get a real clear idea of the type of nonsense she's spewing in this 64 pages. And I quote, I feel done. I can't provide. I don't have any more patience. I'm tired. I get it. I felt all those feelings. My cup been empty. My body's been tired. My heart's been weary. My resources has been exhausted. So when do you know if you're done having children? I have the best news for you. You won't know. That's what faith is. Big man. Send the flood, please. I don't want to be here no more. Stop the world. I want to get off. And not for nothing. Those very short sentences are absolutely riddled with improper grammar. Seriously, Mike Grammarly was going wild in the background while I was editing this video because apparently she couldn't even bother to run the rest of the to a spell check. And I mean, I guess they don't have no editor. I don't know, they just be letting anybody upload onto the internet. Even the top reviewer said, and I quote, "The grammar and spelling is abysmal." And don't even get me started on the content. It's full of misinformation, fear-mongering, and victim blaming. Mind you now, this woman is supposed to be homeschooling 11 children and she can't even get the grammar and syntax right. And to make matters worse, she listed this abomination of a book as being for kids aged 13 to 18. These niggas doing it differently. Cause tell me, what does a 13-year-old need to know about reading a book about how they should get pregnant as many times as God allows? But you know, to be charitable, this isn't a novel idea from Karissa. She didn't come up with this. There is a whole brand of Christian fundamentalism whose tagline is, "Have babies until you physically can't anymore to create more children of Christ." And while I'm sure that they could be filling their children's head with God's word, you know, not math or God forbid science, I promise you that's not the only reason why they're doing this. Let's talk about the real driving force behind these folks, whether they know it or not. The Great Replacement Theory.
The internet has broken a lot of brains. It started as like a 4chan myth and now is like being codified into law. I think the simplest answer to that is like Gamergate. That was the means by which the 4chan basement dweller weirdos infiltrated mainstream society, and that was a misogynistic movement as well.
Karissa talks a lot about the declining American birth rate in her, I don't even want to call that thing about, I mean, her writing. But what she and people in her circle really are saying is that there's not enough white babies being born.
Birth rates have been falling as a consequence of improved living conditions. Like, people are living longer, people are becoming better educated. For the very first time in American history, there are more women in their 40s having babies than teenagers having babies.
It all ties into the belief that white people are in danger of disappearing soon because there are too many people with my complexion, you know, my hue. We people are darker than blue. Too many of us running around the place.
Replacement theory is the idea that white populations are being replaced by minority populations.
This concept has been around for centuries. I mean, it's not new, but it's been taking a real surgence with white supremacists, and they've taken it to a whole new level, a deadly level at that.
Great replacement in particular became very popular because of the changing demographics of a lot of European and American cities. White people just don't like to see non-white people in their spaces. They don't notice other white people because they see us as the default.
On May 14, 2022, residents of a predominantly black neighborhood in Buffalo, New York, were going about their afternoon like normal, heading to their local grocery store to buy some ingredients, you know, probably gonna have dinner with their family later that night. It was just like any other day. And that's when they heard the gunshots. Bodies started hitting the ground faster than people could even realize what was happening, as 18-year-old Peyton Gendron opened fire on a grocery store with a semi-automatic rifle. In just 3 minutes, 180 seconds, 10 lives were stolen and 3 more were injured. 11 of these victims were black, and that was by design.
This race replacement theory that he talked about in this manifesto, there are people who are pushing this hatred on these young people, indoctrinating their minds.
Peyton wanted to make sure that everyone knew his reasoning for his heinous crime. Inspired by extremist communities online, he wrote a 180-page document stuffed full of sick, racist rants and directly referenced Great Replacement as being a big part of his motivation for the shooting. He sincerely thought that poor, disenfranchised white people like him were being systematically replaced by non-whites through things like higher birth rates, immigration, even policy. So he said he specifically targeted a black neighborhood because he wanted to, and I quote, defend the white race. That he was protecting white people by taking out a few niggas for the crime of not being Caucasian.
When I first saw him shooting, he shot a woman, he shot a deacon, he shot another woman, and then he went in the store and started shooting again.
Peyton Gendron is a blatant example of how this 4chan radicalization on the internet and misguided beliefs about Great Replacement can translate into deadly acts of violence. And while Peyton might be one of the more extreme examples of this, I mean, maybe not so extreme, I mean, this is America we're talking about, Karissa and anyone else who's been pushing this have as many babies as you can for Jesus, breeding for Jesus narrative, if you will, are part of it too. Because if you can't legally kill black people in the streets, What else can you do to make sure that there's always more white people around? Produce white babies, as many as possible. Now, to address the yam heads yet again, if you're still watching, I know you're probably thinking, y'all are very smart people, that, hey, foreign, isn't Karissa married to a black and she's making miscegenations? You would be correct. JD Vance the same way. He's married to a woman of color, but that doesn't stop him from reinforcing the structure.
I really, I believe in JD and I really love him. And so we'll just sort of see what happens.
Let me help the Ahmeds out some more, because you even got people like Candace Owens pushing the same narrative.
Like, I have never been more confident in who I am, more sure of myself since I became a mother. Yeah.
Can I give you a little maybe pushback?
Yeah.
If you had to choose one, meaning mother, 3 kids, Candace Owens, political pundit, Daily Wire, you'd give it all up just to be a mother.
Heartbeat, yeah.
Why don't women understand that exact same topic?
Because it's not talked about culturally, because I'm considered counterculture.
This chick ain't raising her kids.
I don't think you could be doing what she does.
No, you can't. You can't. She ain't doing what my wife did.
Why the hell is
she ain't doing what your wife did?
There's no way that you can possibly benefit 12 different children equally in ways that fulfills them as people.
If they told women how hard it is to have one baby, to push one little creature out your uterus is life altering for every woman. Right, that's why rich women are having people have babies for them or adopted, because they're like, oh, this might fundamentally alter my genetic structure. Yep. This might fundamentally take calcium out of my body that I'll never be able to replace. I may never pee right again. These are things. Yep. These are real things. And if you talk to mothers candidly, society has trained mothers not to have those conversations. Every mother I know, the running joke is nobody tells you this shit.
This inherent contradiction isn't lost on me. And I promise you, it's not lost on them either. It's kind of like the 60% of Latinos that voted for Trump. They think they're the exception to the rule. And just because that their kids are black, that doesn't stop Karissa from whitewashing them every chance she gets and parading her husband around like some sort of black buck pumping out a dozen offspring by the minute.
The white guy who is like openly using the N-word and then goes home to his black wife and like kisses her on the cheek and goes to bed. The exception to the rule is an important part of the mental gymnastics that these people are doing. To them, it proves that they're not racist. It's that the black community or the Mexican community needs to get their act together. Just like my lovely Mexican wife who doesn't care that I call her slurs.
I shouldn't have to say this, but just in case, you could be romantically involved with someone outside of your race and still be racist, mind you. You could have black dick in your mouth and that very mouth could then say something extremely anti-black.
There's very often like an erotic element to fear and hate. The pairings of like the big strapping black man with the petite little blonde woman. I would be willing to bet that is consumed mostly by people who expressly fear that dynamic.
There's tons of threads on Reddit accusing Karissa of whitewashing her family. And when you look at some of the stuff she's posting, it's really easy to see that that's not a stretch at all. But foreign, why wouldn't she just marry a white guy if she cared so much about making white babies? Huh? Fetishism. She fetishizes a man and her kids every chance he gets and posts it on the internet for everyone to see, especially the kick enjoyers.
This is low-key porn. No, for real. For real. This is low-key porn. This is, what is it, BNWO? No,
I didn't make the connection until you said it.
I'm serious. The thing people don't get about some of these weird masculinity videos and videos like this is that they're low-key fetish material. Count the amount of times this man's feet are on full display and all the things happening to his feet.
Niggas behind him while he getting chiropractic and pulling his...
Right.
Yeah, you right. That's bait.
When I see this video, that's just my baby daddy. There is a white incel that is stroking it to this TikTok. Go to that. Oh my God.
This one?
Yeah. This is Black New World Order fantasy. You can't not see the racially charged motivation and who that's meant to appeal to. And having this literally big black man produce offspring, much like he would have on a plantation 150 years ago.
Goddamn. This sound got this gal in a chokehold. And all the stuff she posts about the kids is just as weird.
I just took a nip, but now I'm trophied up. I'm sitting like, bing, bop, boom.
boom boom bop bam, bing bop boom 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 bop boom 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 bop boom 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 bop.
Oh my God.
Besides the fact that Karissa got them doing these weird TikTok trends, she's washing them out to look as white as possible in all of her videos. What do you think the chances are that these children have any real connection to their black identity? I mean, seriously. They're completely homeschooled, and when they're out there in the world, do you think that they're actually meeting other black people? Or even if they are they people with their own thoughts, beliefs, and cultures? Or is it only these mainly white Christian fundamentalists everywhere they go? Man, stop the cap. You could see it in their hair. I'm being a little facetious here, but not so much, and I'll stand on this. You can take one look at their kids and tell from their hairstyle that they've never met a black barber in their life. Sure, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Mandry might be able to prepare his kids for the realities of racism and microaggressions off camera. Maybe he's doing that. But he damn sure isn't adept enough to be guiding his daughters through the life as a black woman. And I'm willing to bet that they don't have any proximity to many black women in their family. And I don't care how many IG filters or exposure settings on your camera that you use, they are not going to be seen as anything but black in real life from white people.
My brother, he's kind of the type who exclusively dates white women. He has a child with a white woman, which is fine, except his reasoning for doing so often stems from white supremacist or like anti-black narratives, where he believes that black women are too loud or too ghetto or such and such. And he believes that white women are the savior for the black race.
It's not fair to demand that these kids have equal representation of cultural heritage all the time. But I mean, can they get like a little dollop, just like a little smidge of cocoa butter somewhere? Because being isolated and homeschooled by a fundamentalist Christian mother who can't even spell check her own book, while their father stands there like a breeding stock, as a father myself, I'm worried about what's going to happen to them down the line. And the thing that really terrifies me the most, to my core, is that more and more families like the Collins are popping up every year.
Sunshine, not a cloud inside, spending all day together. I'm talking about Lydia, Isaiah, Micah, Noah, Tabitha, Kayla, Hannah, Josiah, Hollywood, Joshua, Priscilla. Meet the Jew family of Monument. He told me on our first date that he wanted to have 10 children. And I said, oh, that's nice. This is the story of my family. We're the Duggars. That's me. I'm Michelle. There's Jim Bob, my wonderful husband, and our children. Josh is our oldest. He married Anna. And they have our first grandchildren, Mackenzie, Michael, and Marcus. Then there's Jana, John David, Jill, Jessa, Ginger, Joseph, Josiah, Joanna, Jedediah, Jeremiah, Jason, James, Justin, Justin, Johanna, Jennifer, Jordan, and our youngest daughter, Josie.
We've been kicking back on the couch gawking at these families that are basically human-making factories for years now. And all that time, there have been these quirky characters whose lifestyle seems so out there that you can't just help but watch in a mixture of awe and confusion. It's like a car crash. You can't just peel your eyes away even though you probably should.
Putting your child in a position where they don't have a choice but to have their whole life broadcasted, they have this massive digital footprint before they're even able to form their own identity.
And the thing about these sorts of spawn squads is that there's a big reason why they want to get themselves on TV in front of as many impressionable eyes as possible. They're on a mission.
I've seen this kind of thing with like other niches on TikTok, like tradwives, where they position themselves as very normal and accessible, trying to get people to come to their side, basically. They want to kind of indoctrinate people into living their lifestyle, but they also happen to omit a lot of the things that aren't possible. I think tradwives like to make it seem that it's easy to be a one-income household where one person can stay home and take care of 12 children by themselves. It gets people to believe that they can also be that kind of person.
Karissa Collins may be the modern-day TikTok equivalent, but the word was truly introduced to these get pregnant until you die types way back in 2008. That was the year that a new groundbreaking show appeared on everyone's screen.
Budgeting for 19 people in our family is not an easy task. Get them for $1.50. We've probably been making our own laundry soap now for over a year.
Now, the Duggars first caught public attention a few years earlier when they were the stars of a TLC TV special dedicated to their ever-growing family.
My name is Joshua Duggar.
My name is Jana Duggar. My name is John Duggar. My name is Jill Duggar. My name is Jessa Duggar. My name is Ginger Duggar. My name is Joseph Duggar. My name is Josiah Duggar. My name is Joanna Duggar. My name is Josiah Duggar. My name is Jeremiah Duggar. My name is Jason Duggar.
And this is James Duggar. And this is Justin. You say hi? And I'm Jim Bob. This is my wife, Michelle. Welcome to the Duggar home.
People were enamored, obsessed with the idea that this poor woman had already birthed 14 kids and she still wasn't done yet. And it did so well that the network decided to set them up with their own show that would focus on the ins and outs of their daily lives as such an enormous family. It started as 17 kids and counting, and then turned into 18, and then 19. And of course, all of these labors were shown on TV.
It's Michelle and Jim Bob's 19th baby. But because of severe complications, they're thinking that it could be preeclampsia. Michelle must undergo an emergency C-section.
It could kill mom and baby.
If it could kill a mom and a baby, leaving your 18 other kids motherless, then maybe you should stop knocking her up, you... I'm good. I swear I'm good. All right, I'm good. The Duggars said that their goal was to show the world how they lived. Conservative values, homeschooling, Christianity, and of course, having as many babies as physically possible. And it quickly became the TLC network's most watched show with 3.2 million viewers on average. Viewers were fascinated by the Duggar family. Hooked even. The way they got around, how they bought groceries, the values that they were teaching their children. And of course, one of the biggest things that they were concerned about was making sure that every single one of their kids kept pure. Purity over love, over security, purity over all.
Is to remain pure before marriage. And that includes abstinence and saving our first kiss until the marriage day. You guys seriously haven't kissed? For real? Seriously. Seriously, for real, we have not kissed at all. We have talked about it some and just making sure that we're on the same page as far as getting it prepared and being ready for it. So it's just like, you gotta know which way to turn. You don't want to just like miss or something.
When the show was airing, most people just considered the Duggar family super religious wackos, but didn't think they were really causing any tangible harm, you know? It eventually came to light, however, that they weren't just religious. They were a part of the Quiverful movement. And the real goal of putting themselves on the TV for the world to see was to suck more people into this malicious cult.
The cult behind the Duggars, known as the Quiverful movement.
But imagine a timeline where Anna Kaspari and other young turfs could call you out on your caca.
Part of the religion is that you're supposed to have many children, you're supposed to get married before the age of 20, and so as a result, if you want to attend this retreat, all you have to do is pay $1,200, and you meet with like-minded individuals who also have teenage children, and then you find a way to negotiate and arrange a marriage for them.
The movement gets its name from a passage out of the Bible that goes, and I quote, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. As arrows are in the hand of a mighty man, so are the children of the youth. Happy is the man that hath his quiver full of them." In other words, children are arrows in a spiritual war. The more kids they could create that have been indoctrinated into their backwards beliefs, the bigger the army. This isn't your average going to church every Sunday type of family. It's the type that's marrying off their teenage daughters and giving them no say in the matter. It's the type that thinks using any form of birth control is a sin against God. It's a type that never talks to their children again if they don't want to continue in the movement once they realize how damaging it is. But most importantly, it's the type of family that supports their oldest son being a and simultaneously shames their daughters for wearing pants. Yep, you heard that right. The clip of the guy talking about how pure and modest he was for not even kissing his wife before getting married. Yeah, that might have been because he had other interests.
One day after breaking their silence about their family's sex abuse scandal, and the Duggars are under fire. The Washington Post saying they cast themselves as martyrs, accusing them of downplaying the sexual abuse between their eldest son Josh and several young girls, including some of his sisters. The Duggars say at 14, Josh came to them, admitting to touching his victims.
I was struck by how much that they emphasize that it wasn't that big of a deal.
There's so much grief in our hearts. I think as parents, we felt we're failures. You know, here we tried to raise our kids to do what's right, to know what's right, and yet one of our children made really bad choices. And I think as a parent, we were devastated.
Devastated as they may be, they chose not to report their son or do anything to stop it after he told them what it was that he was doing to the other children. They even took it a step further, making their daughters do an interview in solidarity with Josh.
Tasked with damage control, Jill says she and her sister Jessa felt they had to give an interview to Fox News to protect the family brand.
It was like, okay, we need you to fall in line here and do these interviews for the show, go here, do this thing and that thing to kind of rally the troops and get it back together. Jess and I were talking, we're like, oh my goodness, most of the stuff out there is lies, it's not truth. And so for truth's sake, we want to come out and set the record straight.
Can you imagine having your abuse go viral? Only for your parents to push you into saying it was a lie on Fox News? That's a different level of betrayal. And they called it her duty. As much as Jim Bob and Michelle tried to brand this whole thing as one bad mistake that happened in adolescence, it wasn't. Because in 2021, Josh Duggar was arrested for possessing images and videos depicting child abuse and eventually sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison.
The Josh Duggar child case is officially closed. On Wednesday, Josh was sentenced to 151 months in prison, and that's nearly 13 years behind bars.
Was this the final straw for Jim Bob and Michelle? No, they still support him and visit him in prison to this day. What happened to all those family values? What happened to the strict moral code of yours? Well, if you look into the Quiverful movement a little bit deeper, it's obvious why this didn't bother them nearly as much as their daughters getting an education or making the choices for themselves. This cult isn't about God or morality or even having children. It's about male leadership and control.
There are certain types of men who were promised by our society that I am in control, I am the master, and when anybody underneath me deviates from that plan, I need to act appropriately, which is to react with violence.
Women aren't supposed to ever say no to their husbands. They're supposed to fall in line with what their man wants, always. Being obedient is more important than being happy or fulfilled. Popping out babies is more important than being able to care for them properly or making sure that they're not abused under your household. Quiverful women are essentially second-class citizens to the men in their life. And that's why the Duggars weren't really that bothered by what happened to their daughters at the hands of their sons. As adults, several of the Duggar daughters actually ended up speaking out against their rigid and difficult childhood trapped in a family that were followers of the Quiverful movement.
Jill also says small acts of independence, such as wearing pants and getting a nose ring, were met with hostility.
Anyone who is making decisions for themselves that the parents don't give their blessing, that's seen as rebellious.
And unsurprisingly, based on everything we knew about the cult, Papa Duggar was taking every last cent of the profits, even though he was making it all on the backs of his wife and his children.
The 2014 contract detailing payments to the family, starting at $50,000 per half-hour episode and $65,000 for hour-long specials. Jill says the money was controlled by her father. The idea that you weren't paid and yet your wedding attracted 4.4 million viewers. You were, in many ways, the stars of the show.
Yeah, and even the show soon after that was named Jill and Jessa Counting On, and we still weren't seeing income.
So quiverful men like Jim Bob care just as little about their children as they do about women. Just like his wife, their children are slaves to whatever desire he has. These babies are truly just a number and nothing more. It's a selling point on TLC. If not giving a damn about them being abused and then forcing them to say it was all a lie doesn't tell you that, I don't know what else will.
Watching the way that my parents kind of protected my brother, but then used me and some of my sisters, it was hard, and it's still hard to swallow. There's like one point where I call my dad out about it, and I just say, like, You treat me worse than you treat my brother. My brother.
Being able to claim that preventing pregnancy or supporting women goes against the word of God is simply the easiest way to sidestep any type of accountability, just like any other cult. And before you come for me, I want you to think about all of the other cults from back in the day. The People's Temple mirrored the same patriarchal ideology of the Quiverful movement, where men's authority is the absolute and unquestionable end. And that ended with 900 people drinking cyanide-laced Kool-Aid. Heaven's Gate focused on strict religious beliefs by their male-led authority that participants were taught to follow without question. It ended with 39 members ingesting poison, thinking that it was going to take them to a higher plane. The Order of the Solar Temple isolated and manipulated members to force obedience and then used their religious doctrine to justify sacrifices. Ended up with 74 members dying from their rituals. It's forcing women to submit to male authority, no questions asked, and give birth until they die, no matter what. Really any different? Once again, the Duggars aren't a needle in the haystack. These families following this sort of backwards ideology are more plentiful in the United States than you may think. Scarily plentiful.
The Institute organizing family conferences like this one in Big Sandy, Texas, reinforcing their faith and values. Nightline was there in 2011. So were the Duggars.
Swear to Jah, I thought that this woman was Michelle. They look alike. Goddamn carbon copies of one another. They even go into the same body hairstylists. With people like the Duggars or Karissa Collins promoting their lifestyle every chance they get, claiming themselves to be holy followers of God, there's only more of these families emerging all the time. And unfortunately, behind closed doors, many of them are likely suffering the same fate that the Duggar children did. And they don't all have to look like these conservative, outdated 1950 wannabes to push this movement. Look at guys like
Nick Cannon opening up about which of his 12 children gets the most quality time.
I was always like, yo, I want a big family too, so, you know, the Lord has blessed me with what I asked for. Ask and you shall receive.
12 children, 6 different women. And this boy want more, goddamn. You ain't tired?
I feel like there's an influx in black men getting vasectomies. I've been hearing about it, or maybe black men never talk about it.
It's a responsible thing to do. Yeah. I'm not done.
I've always said, somewhat controversially in my personal life, if you are a man with like more than 4 kids by more than 2 women,
you can't adequately father them.
Yeah. You can be like an adequate father. You might not be a deadbeat. You might love those kids. Those kids probably love you, but you ain't doing what I'm doing. Me and you are not the same. You don't know your kids
the same way.
Right. You know what I'm saying? You gotta, if you're not in the house with those kids when a bone is broken, a tooth falls out, a bed is wet regularly, I know that's not something some men choose, right? I want to be empathetic to that. But I'd be damned if I'm gonna hear Cam Newton
said it, after you know I'm a father too.
I actually have some empathy for the Cannons and Cams and some of these other dudes that are literally spreading their seed, in that as a black man of means, there is a push internally to be like, yo, this money means I don't have to be black no more. That's how, and I think you did a video about that too, didn't you? Like way back when.
But I like how you said it though. I think you said it hits a little louder. Go.
Yeah, this money means I ain't a nigga no more. So like, I empathize with that desire because that sucks, and people respond to the trauma that they've experienced, often in ways that cause trauma for other people, right? But at the end of the day, it is emulating the manhood of white men who have never had to play by the rules that they set. Like a Elon Musk, like a Kevin Samuels, who had a whole kid that, you know, Kevin Samuels talking about family for 2 years. Meanwhile, he got a whole kid he didn't raise and 2 marriages that he failed. Kevin Samuels, Umar.
Is that a father who is being physically and emotionally present for his dozen offspring? Or is he just throwing money at them and calling it a job well done? Does that sound like a man that truly cares about his children? Or does it seem like a dude who just wants to spread his seed far and wide? You see, men like Nick Cannon are just like the Quiverful families. He's just promoting the lifestyle to a different demographic. And now the US government is trying their hardest to create even more of them with that big old $5,000 payday that they were offering. And if history is a guide, then it'll probably go straight to the husband, not the wife who, risked their lives to bring these children into the world. So point blank, the Quiverful movement and apparently the United States government wants women to have as many babies as their womb can carry, or die trying. So you're Karissa Collins, I'm sorry. You have 3 children and you just found out you're pregnant with the 4th. Being a devoted member of the Quiverful movement, you are overjoyed that your family is expanding and view having more children as a gift from God. But your husband is concerned. After several major health crises, even a hole in your heart, he thinks it's time to pump the brakes on pregnancy. You have 3 kids to take care of already, and he doesn't want to jeopardize your life by having more. He went to several local pastors who agreed with him, saying that you should stop having kids to be there for the ones you already have, but you shut him down. You swore that you had your trust in God, Yahweh, to tell you to stop. I don't know. Maybe those pastors saying for the love of God, stop, was his way of communicating his message through, proxy. But regardless, you continue to have the 4th pregnancy and have a baby girl in 2013. Now your husband thinks, okay, it's finally time to stop. For real. He even schedules a vasectomy to ensure that you won't be at risk of conceiving again. But after pressuring him by saying that he will have to face God with that choice one day, he decides against it. Then a 5th child was born. Then a 6th. And then by the 7th, her body was clearly trying to tell her something when the baby was born 11 whole weeks early. You end up stuck in the hospital for 5 weeks, while the baby is fighting for his life in the NICU for 40 days. All while your husband worked full-time and desperately tried to care for your 6 other children who wondered if they would ever see their mom again. Miraculously, you both pulled through. For most folks, that would have been it. Not only was your life at risk, but your children too. But no, not for you. No, you got pregnant the 8th time. And then things really spiraled out of control with the 9th. You were trapped in the hospital fighting for your life against a possible postpartum hemorrhage, but you still declined a blood transfusion. Meanwhile, your newest daughter was being tortured by an infection and quarantined in the NICU. The complications didn't end there. The 9th baby nearly died 11 months old after getting another infection. A normal person, a loving mother, a dog would have stopped having babies at that point for her own sake and that of her children, but you did it again. And this time, knowing that the hospital staff and personnel were giving you the bombastic side eye, you decide to sidestep that by having a child in the confines of your home. It was, as you described it, and I quote, a very hard home birth, which could only imply that both mommy and baby almost died yet again. And like a cat with 9 lives, you then even have another after that. Each time it was getting more dangerous for both you and the pickney-dem that you were carrying. You would bring them into the world suffering for their first breath, increasing the odds that your living children will grow up motherless, all because you were following the word of Sky Dad and having as many kids as allowed. Does that sound godly to you? Because if it's the God that you serve, I necessarily know. Dogs seem like because it sounds to me like that's the most selfish thing that you could do on earth. And honestly, borderline abusive at worst. This is the world that members of the Quiverful movement envision. The world that they talk about having babies and pregnancy like it's easy peasy, a cakewalk, no big deal, a woman's true duty. But in reality, pregnancy is one of the most violent things that a body can endure. When you're having a dozen kids, it's only getting more and more risky with each one you push out. Karissa is a poster child for that. With each new child, she comes even closer to dying. And while everyone views pregnancy as this beautiful celebration of life, the truth is, it is violence. Around 260,000 women died during the following childbirth around the world in 2023 alone. Approximately 92% of those deaths were preventable and from middle to low income countries. But there's one high income country where you still have a very, very high chance of knocking at death's door during pregnancy. The United States of America. For every 100,000 live births in the US, 22 women will die. And if you don't have a porcelain complexion, it's far worse. For black women, that rate more than doubles to 50.3 deaths per every 100,000 live births. You may hear that and think that that's pretty good odds, but you'll be wrong. You'll be dead wrong, in fact. In Europe, only 8 women pass away out of every 100,000 live births. The US has more than 2 times the amount of maternal deaths, more than 6 times that for women of color, despite being one of the richest countries in the world. The math ain't mathin'. Unless, of course, you have a country that doesn't give a shit about its women.
Under patriarchy, women are only women through the efforts of men. A woman is not capable of completing her societal and biological role without a man's consent and like efforts, i.e., I married you, I impregnated you, I housed you, I provided for you. So we have a lot of women who do not feel fully human because they have not completed that checklist. They can do all these amazing things. They can go to space for real. but if there's not a man waiting home for them to which she has sired children for, right? Not had a baby with, had your baby.
Yeah. Let me tell you a story that almost brought me to tears. In 2024, Sangeeta Rashia and her husband were thrilled to welcome their first child into the world. Everything with the delivery went fine, and Sangeeta was able to even hold her newborn child in her hands. But a few hours later, Sangeeta's condition started deteriorating. She was bleeding uncontrollably, and the blissful day soon turned into be the worst day for the family's lives when she suddenly passed away. Sangeeta's death wasn't just a terrible tragedy, it was a completely preventable one. You see, the hospital where she was delivering, St. Elizabeth's, had recently been acquired by a conglomerate called Steward Healthcare. And as it turns out, this heartless corporation had been siphoning hundreds of millions of dollars from the 33 hospitals they own. This led to their hospitals accumulating years' worth of unpaid bills. And instead of maybe not stealing money from patient care to line their own pockets, the hospitals stopped getting the life-saving supplies that they needed. And that's why Sangeeta died. She needed a very basic medical device to stop the bleeding and save her life, but it was repossessed by the manufacturer only weeks before because the hospital hadn't paid their bills. And this meant that she had to be crash carted off to another hospital with the proper facilities, but it was already too late. She was gone forever because of ruthless greed. All while the Steward Healthcare CEO, Ralph DeTore, was buying himself a $40 million yacht. And unfortunately, what happened to Sangeeta was not a rarity. If anything, it's becoming more and more common, especially if you look like me.
Meet Angel and Liam, twins just 10 weeks old. They don't know it yet, but they're gonna grow up without their mother. Lynette Williams' tears keep falling on her daughter's newborns she's now raising. The family says 24-year-old Tanisha Evans gave birth to the baby boys in January at St. John's Episcopal Hospital in Far Rockaway, Queens. She had a C-section, was sent home after, and was able to enjoy being a first-time mom for 2 weeks. The family says on day 15, she was found unresponsive in her bed. She was rushed back to St. John's Hospital, where she died. The family believes her death is connected to C-section complications.
I will not have any complications. I will have a good birthing experience.
April Valentine said these affirmations every single day. She thought she would live to see her first child, Anaya, born. But April didn't make it out of the maternity ward at Centinela Hospital in Inglewood, California.
April Valentine was 31 years old!
Now, following months of protest, that ward is set to close October 25th, 2023.
Oh no.
Valentine's family filed a lawsuit on Tuesday, alleging in part wrongful death and professional negligence with demand for a jury trial.
This is the third black or brown woman to die in childbirth at Woodhull Hospital in the last 4 years. Beverly Garcia Barrios appeared to be a healthy 24-year-old pregnant woman, but that all changed last month when she came to Woodhull Hospital. She wasn't feeling well. Doctors rushed her in for an emergency C-section. The father of her child never saw Barrios again. It was Sha'asia Washington in 2020. She also had an emergency C-section at Woodhull and then died. Last November, it was Christine Fields. The New York City medical examiner said she died of hemorrhaging from a C-section also at Woodhull. Action to address these growing crises. It's happened again. A baby left without her mother. A black mom who died suddenly this summer, only a couple of weeks after giving birth.
Like, I could be the best father, I can be the greatest dad in the world, but I can't be her mom.
Saladin Merritt says his partner, Drea Austin, was an amazing mom to her newborn and 10-year-old daughters.
She had a blood clot from her first pregnancy, something that should have been more closely monitored.
She should have been started on the right medicine. She should have been followed up closer after delivery.
The 30-year-old died when that blood clot went to her lung.
We see way too much that African American women, poor women, and women of color do not get the same level of care as white women in America.
Founder of Me Bella Wellness Center in Birmingham, Dr. Mia Cowan issues a word of caution after well-known pediatric chief resident Shanice Wallace died of a pregnancy complication known as preeclampsia.
This doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the completely preventable deaths of mothers in the United States alone. And I think it's worth mentioning that while all these women are dying avoidable deaths from medical complications, do you know what the number one cause of death is of pregnant women? Homicide. Seriously. Yeah, even though there's a million things that could go wrong during pregnancy, from hemorrhaging to sepsis, the leading cause of death for pregnant women in the country is still being murdered. And usually by their own partner.
Domestic violence experts are warning that homicide is the leading cause of death for pregnant women.
Tonight they're sounding the alarm after a Schofield soldier was charged for the murder of his pregnant wife.
While investigators are still working to determine the motive for Denise Middleton's murder, they have confirmed that she was in a relationship with her alleged killer, 31-year-old Tori Moore. Now, State's Attorney John McCarthy says that homicides among pregnant women is a serious issue that he's well aware of.
Many of you probably remember the Laura Woolen case that we had years ago here. That was this wonderful young woman who was the teacher of the year in Howard County, who was killed by a young man named Tyler Tessier because he found out she was pregnant with her child.
Pregnant women are 16% more likely to die from homicide. From 2005 to 2022, 1,407 U.S. women were murdered during their pregnancy, and the vast majority of them died at the hands of a gun. And while the US already had the highest maternal mortality rate by a whole lot, it is only now going to get worse than ever before.
When the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade, the whole world was watching and reacted. In Paris, several dozen protesters took to the streets in solidarity. French President Emmanuel Macron tweeted, "Abortion is a fundamental right for all women. It must be protected."
The overturning of Roe v. Wade in 2022 was the first brick laid of imprisoning women in their own bodies. Remember, it all comes down to control. As Karissa and her culty Christians scream from the rooftops that abortion is murder, they stay quiet when it comes to the countless mothers whose lives are lost. Oh, it's just God's plan, right? Sometimes you wonder, with all this yapping about how God is in charge of everything, do you ever consider maybe God gave us the science of abortion care so that we, could prevent more deaths? I don't know. When it comes down to it, the best way to avoid maternal deaths are contraceptives, safe abortions, and offering the full spectrum of women's healthcare. And let's get one thing straight right now. Abortion is healthcare. When a woman miscarriages a child, even if they wanted them more than anything else, it is technically an abortion that saves them from brutal health complications. And women who want their babies are already suffering from the consequences of not having access to healthcare.
I get so angry that I was treated this way because of laws that were passed that by men.
So you had to hear it twice that you lost a baby.
It's gut-wrenching. Sorry.
That's okay.
Having to carry your dead baby around for weeks is disturbing enough, but many women don't even make it out of the situation alive.
Barnika's husband says that she was told that it would be a crime for doctors to intervene and do that because her fetus still had a fetal heartbeat. And Texas's first abortion law, the 6-week ban, had just gone into effect a few days earlier, and it told doctors they had to record that there was no fetal heartbeat before intervening. 35-year-old Portia Lomsey. She suffered a miscarriage at 11 weeks and went to the ER at Houston Methodist Sugar Land Hospital. She was denied the procedure that would have removed remaining tissue, so she continued to bleed out, dying 3 hours later.
Yeah, I can need y'all at a state park up outside Planned Parenthood to suck me from the back. Cause does America even care about ensuring that the living, breathing women in their country are safe and healthy after they already gone through heartbreaking experience of losing their child? Nah. Even if it means women bleed out to death in the process, they aren't worried about that. And if a woman can't carry to term successfully, they want to prosecute them.
Almost 2 weeks ago, paramedics in Tifton, Georgia responded to a call about an unconscious young woman. When they arrived, they determined the woman had experienced a miscarriage. Gestational age, 19 weeks. The next day, instead of recovering from that miscarriage at home, 24-year-old Salina Maria Chandler Scott was arrested and booked into the Tift County Sheriff's Office. She was charged with 1 count of concealing the death of another person and another count of abandonment of a dead body.
These are states where any miscarriage can lead to a criminal investigation, where the burden now falls on miscarrying women to prove that they didn't intend to suffer a pregnancy loss.
Mind you, this is the same country that offering $5,000 baby bonus while they slashing women's and babies' healthcare wherever they could find fit. I mean, come on now, that absolute lizard of a man, RFK Jr., whatever his name is, just eliminated healthcare screenings on newborns. Newborns, minutes fresh out of the womb. That's who they coming after now. Tell me you only care about children before they're born without telling me. Because the absolute hypocrisy of this is impossible to ignore. The movement that claims it's sinful to terminate a pregnancy because it's murder or even prevent it from happening in the first place is the same one that couldn't care less when women are dying. Is this morality? Is this what God wants? Is this pleasing Yahweh? Or is there an ulterior motive to keeping women chained to their uterus until they die? Women hold something powerful, more powerful than wealth or connections or influence, and the United States government knows this. They have the power of decision, the ability to choose to get pregnant on their own terms and not to do so if they're not being treated right. And trust me, they know exactly how revolutionary of a power that is, and that's exactly why they're doing everything they can to strip it from them.
Women refusing to have children, if they have the power to do so, is literally one of the most powerful pieces of political leverage that we have. And right-wing politicians are not stupid. They know that it's a powerful piece of leverage, and that's why they do everything in their power to eliminate that ability to choose. But a significant enough number of women saying, actually the game is rigged and I will not play it on these terms, go yourself, literally will cause a society to collapse.
Not having children under this administration is probably one of the biggest acts of protest that we can do as a collective.
Just look at what's happening in South Korea right now. Their country was breaded up. But when it came to gender equality, yeah, that was non-existent. Women were expected to be traditional homemakers and mothers, catering to their husbands' every need. All the while, domestic violence was surging through the nation, with 1 in 3 South Korean women experiencing violence in their lifetime. And it wasn't just physical violence. The creeps were taking advantage of technology. There was an epidemic of South Korean men secretly recording women and posting it as revenge porn. So while women were pressured to be perfect, they were being abused by the men that they were told to take care of. It was barbaric. And these women were done. So they decided to leverage their power and organize, and heaps of South Korean women started pushing back against the patriarchal society following their own movement called 4B. There were 4 key rules: no dating men, no marrying men, no sex with men, and no children. Soon, birth rates was dropping just as fast as women's independence and freedom was growing. And once men realized that these ladies meant business and they might never feel a woman's touch again, how fast do you think things turned around? Lightning speed. Like so fast they make your head spin. And these weren't no ambiguous cultural shifts. No, these were tangible. For 68 years, abortion was completely illegal in South Korea. But in 2021, just 2 years after the 4B movement got its legs, the country decriminalized it. Massive protests erupted against the sickos who were secretly watching women on spy cams. And what do you know? All of a sudden, South Korea started cracking down on that crime more than ever. For many years, victims of violent crimes were scared to come forward because of the high chance that they would be hit by defamation lawsuits by their abusers. The courts would just back them in, even if they were predators. Sound familiar? But after the influence of the 4B movement, reforms swept the nation. The government widened access to shelters, restraining orders, and legal help. They even passed an amendment banning South Korean men with a history of abuse from marrying foreign women, which many of them were quick to do when they realized that women in their own country were so sick of it. In 2022, for the first time ever, employers were given the right to petition the Labor Relations Commission in cases of gender discrimination and sexual harassment. And while there's still a long way to go when it comes to equality in South Korea, these women are doing the damn thing. I definitely have my criticisms of the movement, and I don't like the way that they've been rather exclusionary towards queer folk. And when it comes to women of color and how these movements work, it never really pans out the right way. And it often ends up where a particular type of woman is lauded as the ideal, and they are the people who are granted any type of concessions, whereas there's a subclass of women that is not. That being said, 4B exemplifies the raw organizing power of women. The power that the US government is so terrified of and is trying to stamp out as hard as they can. And it really comes down to this. They're grifters. Quiverful families like the Collins and the Duggars, every man is in a seat of political influence desperately trying to pry basic human rights and autonomy away from women. They're in it for the grift of patriarchal control. They're just using religion as a weapon. Just like Christopher Columbus coming to the Bahamas with the Bible and leaving with the land and a bunch of dead Lucayans. Keeping women down and dependent makes them easier to exploit and too occupied to organize. If women are so busy at home raising your 12 babies, you don't have to be worried about them surpassing you in the workforce or in life. It's less competition. Plus, when women are working so hard to get their basic rights back, it distracts them from the bigger issues at play. They're rigging the game in their favor. It is simply a patriarchal breeding grift in Christians' clothing. This isn't about trusting God or being religious. It's all about oppression and control. Their faith is just a vehicle for getting it there. Twisting religious teachings into manipulative tools, taking away the Bible verses and the condemnation of sin, and that's all that's left. A power structure built on keeping women submissive, exhausted, and struggling to survive. We got a phrase in the Caribbean called, "When America coughs, we die," which speaks to how issues that plague the United States are only amplified in the developing world because we don't have many of the safeguards that the States has, and that says something, because y'all ain't got much. The monopolization of women's bodies is a serious issue in the Caribbean. My mouth dropped when my research revealed that not only is abortion illegal in the Bahamas, but you can't even get your tubes tied without the written consent of your husband. And if you're in childbearing age, you won't find a doctor that would even carry out the procedure in the first place. As you can imagine, this has much more dire implications when you consider the reality of sex tourism in the Caribbean, where wealthy Westerners travel to the developing world to take advantage of the impoverished and unprotected communities in the conquest of flesh. I talk about this at length in my video, The Caribbean Commodity of Flesh, a deep dive into one of the most profitable and pernicious underground industries in the Caribbean. And it can be extrapolated to the developing world in general. It investigates how it works across sex and gender, especially a dissection of the rented dreads in Jamaica, which touches on an under-discussed topic of male sex work and exploitation. There's quite a bit of risky themes throughout the video, to the point where you couldn't even censor it to be suitable for most platforms, I ain't gonna lie to you. Which is why you won't find this video anywhere other than my streaming service, Nebula. You can get my videos ad-free, early, and extended on Nebula, as well as exclusive videos from thoughtful creators like Bobby Broccoli and H. Bomberguy, because Nebula is home to our prestigious pieces you won't find anywhere else, like my stand-up comedy debut on Abolish Everything, a comedy game show where contestants are abolitionists who bring up petty grievances to be abolished. But a panel of people dedicated to maintaining the status quo are there to thwart the abolitionist efforts by making a case against it on the spot. And when I tell you that this is one of the first times I was ever nervous performing, because I was sharing the stage with talented comedians like Kylie Brakeman of Tonight Show fame and a litany of brilliant performers. Let me stop talking about it because I can't hold water. I don't want to spoil it for you. Watch that and the amazing exclusive episodes, because Nebula is filled with shows just like these that won't work on other platforms. And you could gain access to Nebula for as low as $6 a month or $60 per year. But with my code, nebula.tv/foreignman in a foreign land, you get access to a 40% discount, thus bringing it down to $36 a year. You could also get Nebula for $300, which goes directly to creators making bigger and better projects that you would have a hand in supporting. And you could also get the gift that keeps on giving with Nebula gift cards. But most of all, you get to support us making the works that you love and elevating it into prestigious pieces of art. So if you want to support the future filmmakers, documentarians, and storytellers of society, then sign up for Nebula using my code nebula.tv/foreignman in a foreign land. And tap right here to watch some more required viewing, because this is just the beginning of the story. Finish it up right here. I can see it in.